Yo, I'm Brendan, and if you are someone that you care about is going to buy a car, do not make this mistake because it will cost you thousands of dollars. The mistake is when you go into buying a car and your whole mindset is fixed on just your monthly payment. This is what you negotiate with. This is your sole point of focus. Does it fit with my budget? Yes or no? It's a massive mistake that costs you a ton of money. This is the equivalent of you diving into piranha-infested waters wrapped in bacon. You are inviting disaster. I've always thought about this concept because I knew somebody who came into a dealership and he focused on his payment. It was like $450 a month is all I can afford. Whatever is under $450 is good. And I know that he got taken advantage of, but it was too late. He already bought the car. I also saw an ad recently for Drive Time, and they've got this whole payment configurator thing where they can add on whatever they need to make their money. As long as it's underneath your car payment limit, everything's fine, right? No, it is not fine. This is like saying, tell me you don't know what you're doing when you're buying a car without telling me that you don't know what you're doing. So today, this video has two parts. Number one, I'll share with you why this is such a huge mistake and how people can take advantage of you if you come into a car buying situation with this as your sole strategy. And then part two is the best ways for you to buy and negotiate a vehicle purchase so that you actually save money. Why should you listen to me about this stuff? Well, I worked at a car dealership for a couple of years, both inside the sales department, actually selling cars, and then also doing other positions. And so I saw the tactics that I'm about to tell you about firsthand, literally in my job, and then also through talking to the owners of the dealership and finance managers and all that stuff. So I'm very familiar with the kind of ways that you can be taken advantage of. And this is also what I do. I literally make videos for this purpose, to help you to course correct whenever you're going to potentially make mistakes and instead leverage your money as a way to accomplish your goals. That's what my wife and I have done for the last 15 years when we became millionaires last year at 37 years old. So what I'm talking about works for normal people like me and you. Now, onto the car buying mistakes. Whenever you walk into a dealership and you constantly focus on your payment being at or below a certain amount, and then everything is fine as long as you get the car that you want for the payment that you want, it's a setup for disaster. The salesman is going to just love you because he knows he's going to make a ton of money off of you today. So they're going to treat you really well. They're going to escort you around the dealership. Everyone's going to be smiling and nodding because they all know that they just took a bunch of money from you. And here's how they do that. A car purchase is broken out into a bunch of different sort of sections of the price, if you will. Nowadays, it's not as simple as just buying a car, especially at a dealership, if you're buying something new, that kind of thing. Okay, maybe if you're buying from a private party and you guys negotiate a price and there's literally nothing else a part of that, it's a different story. But anytime you're at a dealership, and especially for new vehicles, there's a lot of potential extras over and above the price of the vehicle. So when you just focus on only the payment, you're not negotiating the price of the car. You're not asking them for any kind of discount. You're not seeing if they're adding any kind of markup on there for just shits and giggles, if nothing else. They can add what's called ADM, which is adjusted dealer markup, or sometimes it'll be called, other terms, but basically it's like, people want this car, so we're going to throw some extra profit on top of it, over and above the profit of the MSRP that we're already going to get, just because we want more money. If your one metric is your payment, you're not doing anything to save yourself money there. Then there's tons of dealer added extras like window tint, nitrogen filled tires, door edge guards, security systems. In Arizona, like where I am, people will add desert protection packages, which largely is nothing. And depending on where you live, there's going to be a myriad of other things. And this can add thousands of dollars to the price of the car. If you're not negotiating those things down or wanting a car without that junk on there, you're missing out. You're just spending tons of money for nothing, or at least for a bad deal. Even if it's not for nothing, like let's say they really are giving you something for each of those things, it's probably got a ton of profit built into those things, and you have a right to negotiate that, or to say, take it off the car, or give me a different car that doesn't have that junk on there. You also aren't negotiating for things like an extended warranty, because the friend that I had that bought the truck in question, that his budget was like $450 a month, that's all I've got to spend, anything under $450 and I'm good. Well, we can do that, and we can add a warranty for you, and we can add gap protection. And so he came away thinking, well, this is great. I got the truck that I wanted, I got a warranty, I got gap, I got everything that I need. But because he didn't negotiate both of those things, there's no way he got the best deal on them. If you're not familiar with extended warranties, they just give you potentially more of the same kind of coverage that the warranty that comes with the car gives you. So if something like catastrophically fails, then hopefully they cover it. But aftermarket warranties often don't cover things as well as the actual manufacturer's warranty. Gap protection is like an insurance policy, if you will, because vehicles depreciate so fast, their depreciation curves drop off faster than you can pay them off. So let's say you buy a vehicle for $40,000. Well, by the time you drive it for a year, it might only be worth $30,000. But because of an amortization schedule on your loan, and because you got a high interest rate, and because all these other stupid reasons, maybe you still owe $36,000 on the car. At that point, if you get totaled, you're $6,000 upside down. Upside down is one term for that. Underwater is another term for that. And basically, you owe more money than this thing is worth, and you're still on the hook for that. The loan is still the loan, whether the vehicle was taken care of or not, crashed or not. It just sucks to suck at that point. And so you can have this kind of gap protection that protects you when that time period exists, when the vehicle depreciation has outpaced you paying off the loan. In a few minutes, I'll tell you my opinions about these kinds of products, the warranty, the gap protection, that kind of stuff. If you're curious about that, you can see that at the end of the video. And the last thing that is a major negotiation point and something that you need to take control of in an automotive purchase that you're giving control over of whenever you're just focusing on your monthly payment is your auto loan terms. The terms of the loan that you sign up for are so important. This should be the number one or number two thing that you're focused on whenever you're buying a vehicle. And yet, if you're just going in there saying, hey man, my payment's just got to be below $525 a month. That's what I can afford. No worries, bro. I'll take care of you. Then you get hosed. Then maybe you're paying 7.8% interest for 72 months or something ridiculous so that you can get the vehicle you want at the monthly payment you want, and your finances be damned. I'll slow down for a second here and say, I realize that it is a complicated thing for a lot of people to understand how financing works and how do you know what's a good deal and not when it comes to an auto loan, and how do you know if you can afford or not your dream vehicle? Because let me take a personal example. Like, let's say I've got $500 a month to spend on a vehicle and I really want that new Cayman GT4 RS. If I walk into the dealership and say I've only got $500 a month and somehow they find a way for me to accomplish my dream of having that vehicle, it's not really my dream vehicle, but it's awesome, and they can somehow fit that within $500 a month, how can you say no? You know, it seems like the stars are aligning for you. It seems like things are working out for you. Now that loan term would probably have to be like 300 months to be able to have a payment that cheap. But if you don't care about that and all you care about is the short-term pleasure of getting this vehicle that you want, then you can overlook something like a really awful loan term. And because that's tricky, that's why I want to move into part 2 of the video, which is telling you better ways to look for vehicle deals, how to set yourself up for success, how to go in and negotiate a little bit better so that you save some money on the vehicle and you still get what you want, right? You still get the vehicle that you want and need. You can still afford it, but you also save money along the way. First off, whenever you identify a vehicle that you want and you think that it might be within your price range, maybe you do some math with an online calculator and you figure out, okay, this is a contender. Ignore the monthly payment for a second and ignore what you think the dealership can or can't do for you and focus on negotiating the price of the car in and of itself, without reference to how you're going to pay for it. These guys really want to know, are you going to pay cash? Are you going to finance? What are you going to do? You're going to write a check? How are you going to pay for this today? Screw them. You don't owe them any extra information at this point. You need to know, what's the best price that I can get on this car? Depending on the car and depending on the time of year and what's happening in the world, you can get some pretty awesome discounts. $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 off a normal car. That's not totally unheard of. But if it's something that a lot of people are after, if for whatever reason the supply is genuinely short, you probably aren't going to get a big discount. And in the past, I've advised different people to buy the vehicle that they want, and they'll say something like, you know, how much should I negotiate on the price of this thing? I really want this Subaru, or I really want that new truck, or whatever it is. And here's what I tell them. The vehicle is worth what you think it's worth. If you would rather just pay the price that's on the sticker and not try and negotiate for 3 hours because you think that's fine, it's worth $37,000 to me. Awesome. Fine. Pay for it. Don't worry about it. Don't lose sleep over this. But if you do some research and you talk to some people and you find out that that new Dodge pickup is pretty typically getting discounted by $5,000 right off the top, then you could probably go in there with that expectation and try and go for that. Maybe you don't get the full $5,000, but in a conversation of 30 minutes, if you can get $3,000 off, you're getting paid $6,000 an hour. That's pretty amazing negotiation skills you've got right there. You should probably be a negotiator for work if you're going to make $6,000 an hour. Then after you negotiate the price and you land on that in and of itself, you know, only the car, no other kind of accoutrement to it, then move on to any potential dealer added extras. Unless you would have done these things to the vehicle anyway, then these are totally viable things for you to negotiate, for you to request that they be taken off or get a different vehicle that doesn't have them, get significant discounts on them, otherwise get a deal on these things. Like whenever I bought my last brand new vehicle, which was my Ford Maverick truck, it came with window tint and a spray-in bed liner. No, that wasn't that truck. That was my F-150. The F-150 came, this was 10 years ago now, the F-150 came with window tint and a bed liner. And I was like, well, I don't know if this is the best deal I could ever get on these things. Maybe I could have sourced it myself and saved $100 total, but I was going to do this stuff anyway. It's Arizona. I need window tint. This truck is for construction. I need a bed liner. So perfect. Let's go. But you can find some insane examples of markups and dealer added extras and just ridiculous stuff that these guys slap on there that's not a viable thing that you need to pay for. So negotiate that next. That's part 2. Then part 3 is to finally start crossing the bridge with the finance person, with the sales manager, whoever's actually going to handle the transaction, and discuss whether you're going to finance or pay cash. Oftentimes, the dealer is really partial to actually providing you financing. This is counterintuitive to a lot of guys like, I don't know, intuition about what it means to buy a car. They'll be like, oh man, well, what's the price of the vehicle? 40 grand. What's the price of the vehicle if I pay cash? Like, as if that means something to them. Does that help the dealership in some way to have cash versus financing? Actually, the opposite is true more often than not. Because what happens is whenever they get a financing rate, like let's say they call a bunch of banks and they say, hey, I've got Joe Schmo here. He's filled out this credit app. He's got this income. He's got this credit history. He wants to buy this vehicle. Here's his debt to income ratio. Here's all of his statistics, basically. What kind of rate can you give him? What kind of term? What's the deal? The banks come back. They give him their information. And they say, hey, we'll loan him this money at 5.5%. What the dealership can do then is present to you an offer of maybe 6.25%. So partially as a commission because they went out and did that legwork for you and they found that loan for you because you didn't come in with any preparation, and also partially just because they can. It's a way that they can make money. They'll keep that difference, that half a point or however much interest they can talk you into, because they're going to make a bunch of money doing that. Granted, it's really convenient to just let them do that for you because they're typically pretty quick at it, but the way to engineer around that possibility of having a higher rate than you need, of spending more money than you need to, is to get a loan sourced yourself before you even get there. So go to your bank, go to your credit union, go to somewhere that claims to have, good auto loan financing rates, and go there so that you get at least pre-approved somewhere, straight from the bank, straight from the lender. And what this does is it's going to give you a ballpark sense of what you think would be a wise kind of rate and loan term situation before you get there into the dealership. Maybe you find out ahead of time, oh, I could get this at 5.5%. So now you're presenting me with this 6.25%. That's actually not a good deal. How would you know that? Tailored to yourself, not just a Google search, an actual loan approved for yourself if you didn't go and do that work ahead of time? There's really no way that you would. And if you came in there and said, well, I did a Google search and they say that car loans are as low as 4.5%. Well, that's not you. Every car loan is specific to a certain situation, to your income and your credit history and your debt to income ratio and all that stuff. So you really need to be pre-approved yourself to have that be either proper ammunition so you can negotiate with them, or you can just say, hey, I don't need you guys to finance anything. I've already got my own financing. Boom, done, conversation over. Unless the dealer potentially has an even better offer. Will the dealer always be able to undercut your pre-approval? No, absolutely not. But sometimes the manufacturer themselves, Ford, Honda, Chevy, whoever it is, they will be able to incentivize the purchase of brand new vehicles with extremely low interest rates. My wife and I bought her car with a 0% loan for 36 months, which meant we got to keep all of that cash that we had been saving up. We had planned on spending on the car. And what we did was we actually invested that money and made a big profit over the last 3 years until actually this month, October of 2024. And I'll post a link to the video that I made about that at the end of this video. I think that's a really cool option, but there's something that you've got to watch out for whenever it comes to signing up for financing, signing up for, a new vehicle purchase, getting all the paperwork done, because there's another trick up the dealer's sleeve potentially. What they can sometimes do is what's called streeting you a car. So they're going to put the car out on the street with you, but as a verb, it's streeting. And what this means is that they go through the whole process of finding the right vehicle for you, agreeing to the price, loan terms, everything. You sign paperwork. Everything seems great on the outside because everything has worked out for you. But what they failed to tell you is that they actually haven't secured the loan that they've told you about. Instead, they probably have lied to your face and said that they secured a loan for you. But in reality, they didn't. Now, why would they do that? Why would they give you a car so that you think it's yours when it's really not? Well, psychologically, they've let you leave with the car that you want, with the terms that you agreed to, and now that bonding process has started happening between you and the car. So you show it to your friends and your family. Maybe you sell your old car because, hey, you got the new one. What do you need the old one for? And then a few days or a couple weeks go by and you get a call back from them. And they say, hey, Jimmy, this is Bob over at the dealership. I'm in the finance department. The bank actually needs different terms for you for your loans. We just need you to come back, sign this new paperwork, and everything will be fine. Or they might say, hey, Jimmy, turns out the bank actually needs more down payment than you were able to provide for us. And now it sucks because you're stuck. You probably got rid of the old car. You've already bonded with the new car. You've made plans with it. Everything seems really great. And now you're kind of painted into this corner. And they, along the way, haven't admitted to deceiving you. They just said, well, the bank called us back and said they demand this now. How do you know if that's true or not? But this is like a classic old school tactic that happens, too often. But it's great for the dealership because they get you out the door a lot faster. You seem happier. You start that bonding process with the car with a little bit of human psychology later, plus an actual callback from an actual lender, the next day or a couple days later. They add on a little sprinkling of their own financing. They hold a percentage for themselves. And then they just give you the call. I'm really sorry. This is an annoying paperwork thing. Can we have someone drive the paperwork out to you? You can just re-sign it. no problem. And before long, you're taken advantage of. So beware that kind of thing. Look at the paperwork whenever you're buying a car. Read all the fine print. Or you can pay cash or have your own loan secured whenever you go in so that you can eliminate the risk of being taken advantage of in that way. So thus far, we've negotiated just the price of the car. We've negotiated any kind of extras on top of it and that kind of thing. We've secured or negotiated the way we're going to pay for it. Hopefully before we get there, but if not, whenever we've gotten there, we figured out the kind of loan terms we need. The last thing we need to do is to decide if we're going to opt into any of those kinds of extended warranties, gap coverage, service plans, all that kind of thing. Now, for someone who makes personal finance videos and also worked in the car dealership for a couple years, you probably assume that I have very strong opinions about extended warranties, service plans, that kind of thing. But I'll confess to you that overall, I feel kind of ambivalent because they're sort of like insurance for your vehicle. They're just amortizing the cost over time of these kinds of things. So instead of having that one big service bill at 40,000 miles, you just paid for it in little increments over time. Or if at 101,000 miles, when your warranty is expired, your engine just decides to spit the rods out the side of the block, well, that sucks. That's $15,000 or $20,000 unless you have an extended warranty that you've been paying for years and years and years, and now you've amortized that cost out over time and made sure that you don't have like that big hit to your wallet. So I can see the appeal for somebody if you want to avoid those kinds of big scary bills, just level out that payment over time. Hopefully you have less headaches, less problems, less big fat checks to write. Nobody writes checks. Less big fat cards to swipe. But I will tell you this, on my last two new vehicle purchases, which were a 2021 vehicle for my wife and the 2024 Maverick that I bought, we didn't buy any extra warranties, no service plans, no gap insurance, nothing of the sort. And the reason isn't because I don't think those things are worthwhile or I think it's a huge waste of money all the time. Sometimes it's totally worth it. But the reason we didn't do that is because I think we have a different plan that makes sure you never need to buy those things. If you were going to buy those, it's probably $200 to $400 a month, I would guess, for a service plan and or a warranty, maybe a little gap insurance on top, something like that. Instead of paying that money to the dealership, to the warranty provider, to some service company, whatever, keep the money, invest it instead. Or at least that's what we did. So here's how we did that. This is our 6-step vehicle purchase plan kind of a thing. Number one, we're only looking at vehicles that are cheaper than we can afford because it naturally creates that gap anyway. So if you weren't totally sure if you'd had that extra budget for the extended warranty anyway, just go a notch down in vehicle. So you make sure you've got that gap of $100 to $300 per month. You take that money, put it in a taxable brokerage account. And it serves as kind of an emergency fund for life and cars. And because you invested it in the stock market into something logical, diverse, reliable, like an index fund, you can count on it actually growing. Then step 3 is 3. My kid does 3s like this. If something big goes wrong with the vehicle, you withdraw the money out of the account, you pay for the thing, and all is well. And the beautiful thing, step 4, if something big doesn't go wrong, happy days. Because whether you knew it or not, you've been setting up and saving for the next vehicle. And part 5 is just the crux of this thing for me, because what this does is it gives you options. Because if you're sitting on enough cash to buy a vehicle, you've got all the different options and all the different ways to shop that benefit you the most. You just do the math and figure out what saves you the most money. You could write a check, pay it off in cash, have the vehicle done and paid for, no monthly payments, so your monthly drag is less because of that, so that's really cool. Or maybe there's incentivized financing. If there is, you can do something like we did, which is keep that cash, invest it, take the super cheap financing of 0% or 1% or whatever it is, make the payments from either income that you have sitting around because maybe you were saving up for the car, or in this case, you could actually take the money that's in the brokerage account and just dole out a payment from it every month. And that allows the rest of the cash in there to continue growing, and then you're better off this way versus paying cash. No matter how you slice it, this way it gives you the choice. You're in the driver's seat. That's a cheesy analogy for this video, I apologize. But you're not at the mercy of needing a dealership, a salesman, a finance manager to help you. You've helped yourself. You've set this thing up to win. You're good to go. And then just part of that, step 5, is you assessing how much and whether or not you want to finance anything. And you're saying, okay, maybe I've been doing this for 5 years and I've got 15 grand saved up, so I could pay for half of it in cash right up front and have a cheap payment, maybe get a lower financing rate. That's really good for me. Maybe I want to keep that 15 grand, have it invested, have that grow. You know, it just gives you a plethora of things that you can do that benefit you. And then part 6 of this car buying plan is forecasting actually out into the future and seeing how powerful that can be for you. For us, it was just a 3-year time frame that we had this 0% financing on my wife's car, and that amounted to a shocking amount of positive impact for us. So if you want to watch that video next, it's right here. The secret comment word for today is turbos, because turbos are fun. They make vehicles a little bit more fun oftentimes. And all 3 of the vehicles we have right now somehow are all turbocharged. So leave me a comment with turbo in there. Thank you for subscribing. If this video helped you at all, please send it to a friend. That would help me out a bunch. And I'll see you next time. Bye.